Hey, this is Kenny from the band If I Fall, playing with Dave Evans. We wouldn't have known it was going to be such a historical event. I didn't know, my band didn't know until later that night, probably during Dave's performance, and maybe when some of the numbness wore off afterward. We had just started this band, If I Fall, and are kind of on a fast track. And I got a call from a friend of mine and said, "Hey, would you be interested in playing the whiskey?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. I'd like to do that." And so we made an arrangement, and we could have chose one or two nights. One was Dave Evans, and one was another artist. And so we chose to play on Thursday night with Dave Evans. And though I hadn't heard a lot about the build up in the event and what have you, we just signed on. Well, as we got closer to the show, I would end up making friends with Mr. Lydian Gray, who I consider a very dear and close friend nowadays. So I started talking with Lydian, and I had no idea the amount of work that he had put into the production and whatnot. That Dave was in Europe and Australia. Lydian was in Chicago. They had a friend who was in San Diego, and so we were talking, getting more excited. The buildup was coming on, and one night Lydian called me and said that the other guitar player had suffered from a heart attack, and prayers with him and his family. But anyway, there was talk of the show being canceled, even, and I remember talking with Lydian and saying, "Dude, the show has to go on. What do you need?" I mean, I offered some suggestions. I was like, "You're a rocker, dude. Like, why don't you do an acoustic set or split something up or just make it happen with what you got?" And he was yeah, you're right. The show must go on, right? He had put so much work into it. I was only discovering how much he had done, and would still discover more later. But so one of the problems early on was the person that had a heart attack and would eventually pass away after this show. Again, deepest thoughts for him and his family. And he had the back line in the recording studios and the stuff. He was out here in the West Coast, San Diego. So Lydian was in a fix, and I said, "Well, I work at Backline Rehearsal Studios. I work for a man named Shaw Dolly, and who's allows me to be in music and have a rehearsal space, and I've recorded an album here." And so I told Lydia, and I'm like, "Hey, let's call my boss, and if you need a backline or if you need help or some rehearsal space, let's make an arrangement, and we can get that. We can probably get that started." So Lydia called my boss, and it was, the show was moving on. So as soon as we got to the whiskey, of course, I seen Dave immediately. Pretty hard to miss, and what a personable guy! What an incredible person! And man, he had no problem, no reservation at all at talking about the early days with ACDC and writing music with Malcolm and what have you. But personally, I was a little more excited to meet Lydian in person. And I even talked Lydian up to Dave. I'm like, because I know Dave uses lots of other artists as he tours around the world. And I said, "Hey, bro, you got an incredible person there, a very talented and incredible guy, and a loving and a kind person, and somebody who really put himself into it and out there." And wow, and what Lydian had done with the person who had passed and with his family and all, and managing all these things, it was absolutely incredible. What an awesome friend to have to this day. And anyway, so we took a bunch of pre-show pictures and what have you, and I did my performance, and I'm glad to say it went off very well. I thought, and it was a nice warm reception. And again, I didn't realize the history of the moment until Dave was performing, and he talked about it during the performance and said, saying that he had wrote a song, and I believe it's like 1974 with AC/DC in their earliest days, first album stuff or pre-first album, or if or not it made the first album, and that he wrote a song called Sunset Strip, and as it were, it had never been performed on Sunset Strip, and thinking after going through the singers that AC/DC went through, and after that, Axl Rose of all people joining the band and having and doing that for a while, for the original singer to come back and perform the song Sunset Strip on the Sunset Strip was quite a moment. And what a blessing it was to be there and to be part of that. Or in the earliest times when we were talking, I'm thinking, great. I mean, wait, we're gonna play the whiskey. It's a pretty big deal, and it was pretty awesome in its own right. But to make a stamp or a mark, and in the pages of rock history, however big it is, however anybody would interpret it as a huge thing or a blurb, however it will be respected, to be part of that was an amazing experience. I'm grateful for the friends I made. I'm grateful for the experience I had. I'm ever grateful for having met Dave and meeting Lydia and working with these fine people and incredible musicians. And Dave was absolutely amazing in terms of some advice in the earliest days of my project, and talking with my bandmates who are some younger guys. And it was really incredible. And what a blessing. And I'm grateful for that call.